Okay, the theme of the Legacy of Poetry this year is Feeding Our Hunger. And the committee had wanted to address the issues of hunger on our campus and how students experience hunger, how we have hunger in our community. And so we've adjusted all of our readings around that topic.
San Jose State University has a history of being passionate about poetry.
And sometimes I trip over the hurdle, and the hurdle was me.
It is an arrangement of agreements of always war.
And I grew deep in me, like hiding in the sea.
April is National Poetry Month. We celebrate poetry with students, faculty, alumni, nationally acclaimed poets, and you. This is the San Jose State Legacy of Poetry. Don't miss U.S. Poet Laureate Emeritus Juan Felipe Herrera, California Poet Laureate Lee Herrick, and the legendary Luis Valdez, among the many poets reading on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 28th through 30th in the Student Union Theater. The theme this year is Feeding Our Hunger, so food donations are encouraged. Proceeds will benefit the Spartan Food Pantry.
Yeah, they did a great job with that, didn't they? So this is the first of a 2-series program we're having at the library tonight. Today is the first one, and I'd like to invite you to return if you have the time and interest to our second poetry reading. We're going to have poets from La Rais magazine and the SJSU Culture Counts poetry series reading also. And tonight we are here to celebrate the poets of Read magazine. Here's a listing of the poets that are reading. Poets, thank you so much for coming. We so appreciate your participation. And just as a reminder, we do have access to the Read magazine in a couple ways. The Read magazine is included in our special collections as part of our student publication, which is the bibliographic record you see on the left-hand side. And then I found just direct issues to the magazine through some of our databases. So there's multiple ways to get to the poetry, to the various readings. And then finally, I just want to remind you, we are here to think about hunger in our community. So if you can, please make a donation. So I'd like to thank Jane Berg and the rest of the Read magazine folks for coming to work with us. Jane, do you want to come and introduce everybody?
Thank you, Peggy. Hi, everybody. I'm Jane Berg. I'm the managing editor of Read Magazine, and I wanted to say thank you so much for being here. I really didn't expect this big a crowd to come on a sunny Tuesday afternoon to hear poetry, so thanks for that. And super huge thanks to Peggy for really doing so much hard work and to put this whole operation together. And thank you to the MLK Library for hosting us and their wonderful audio and visual support, which was completely beyond me. So thank you. And of course, we would like to also say thank you to Alan Soldowski and the Legacy of Poetry Festival for generating the idea behind this partnership. So maybe I can tell you a little bit about Read Magazine if you don't know a lot already. Read Magazine is California's oldest literary journal, tracing its heritage to 1867. The journal started as a pamphlet by the students of California State Normal School, and it was the precursor to San Jose State University. And in more than a century and a half of publication, Read has remained a literary hub publishing fiction, poetry, essays, profiles, and art from all around the world. So along with our general submissions, which by the way are open from June to October, we also have our we also have submissions for our contests. That would be the John Steinbeck Award for Fiction, the Gabriel Rico Challenge for Nonfiction, and the Mary Blair Award for Art. And perhaps most relevant to us tonight is the Edwin Markham Prize for Poetry. And so I would like to welcome our poet, the winner of our prize, Linda Ravenswood, and I'll have Addie come up and say a few words about her. Addie is our poetry editor for issue 156.
Hi, everybody. Wow, it's really great to see you all. This is surreal because the poets who are here reading tonight, we know your work really well. We've been reading and rereading the poems we selected from you to publish. We can all probably recite them by now, right, Dylan? Yeah, so it's just amazing to see you in person. I'm actually trying to find good words for it. Probably won't tonight, but someday I'll tell you. And I do hope I get to talk to each of you, be at the very least introducing you tonight. So I'm Addie, by the way, Jane said that, poetry editor for this issue. So I'm going to introduce our featured reader, Linda Ravenswood, the winner of our Edwin Markham Prize. Linda's poem, The Children Turn Themselves into Ice, rose to the tippy top of our pile of over 4,000 poems. So Linda, we're so honored to have you here. Linda's a story keeper, poet, arts advocate, and performance artist from Los Angeles. She's a 7th generation California school teacher. Her recent collections include the anthology Tlacuic, Indigenous and Chicana Voices Through Pandemic, which is with Hinchas Press, and she was the editor of that, and the book Cantadora, Letters from California, I Wear London, Black Spring Press Group. And this is her recent book published in 2022. She has copies to sell on the table. She also has chapbooks from Mouthfeel Press, El Paso, and Pedestrian Press. Finally, she is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Los Angeles Press, and I believe that Linda brought a few copies to sell of that as well. So without further ado, we have Linda to read poems for us.
Thank you so much, Addie and Jane. Where are you? There's Jane. And thank you so much, Helen. It's so very nice to meet you all after all these months working together so closely. And congratulations on the legacy of Read Magazine. My one and only aunt, Susan McKee, is class of 1963 here at San Jose State. So I feel right at home. My grandfather lived in Palo Alto, so I really do feel all the spirits with me tonight. So thank you so much. I'll read the piece that you so kindly selected. I had no idea it was one of 4,000. That's amazing. And thank you so much to MLK Library and to Peggy for having us today. Thank you so much. And also thanks to Juan Felipe Herrera for selecting this poem. The children turn themselves into ice. I can be quiet. I can pretend you never existed, and the walk across the desert a dream. I could imagine your rig is just an ice cream truck, your siren, the song that calls me to the street. I can imagine the desert is a street, this border jag the way to school, this fence, a fence between two grand properties. My father, the king of the mountain and the land to the west, my uncle of the domain beyond. Shh. There are orchards and olive trees and peaches, fish ponds of my mother in a diaphanous dress. I can imagine a movie. My pockets are full of corn. remember everything, but be quiet as stone, imagine stone, be the kind of book that holds oblivion. If you can be that quiet, if you can be that useful, if you can be that slate gray. Pequeña, Johanna, semilla de manzana. I heard a little girl on the opposite side of the Rio Grande successfully turned herself into ice and floated downstream. She was that kind of glacial child who tripped a little, left a little, and flowed. When she finally came to the sluice gate and La Paz, it was just enough to scoop out of the water. Turn yourself into ice. There was just enough story left. Thank you so much. And that's for the 8 children who died in ICE detention in 2018 and 19 and 20. I'll read from the book Cantadora that just came out from, as Addie so kindly mentioned, thank you, Addie, from I Wear London. And I'm so happy to announce that hopefully your faith in me is justified. This just won the Oxford Prize. So, thank you so much. My mother has burst apart. All the bells of Mare Island. Mother's lungs, the way they slip in view on the X-ray screen, shoe and shoehorn, a soft satin bray against some Pacific coast, her body, nights full of stars, my grandfather holding her up and in and out of weeks so she would not die from whooping cough, his warm Scots-Irish hands against her back, the soft clothes of the 1940s, all the bells of Mare Island and fog along the Farallones. It was the Second World War and the rubber drive, their house on wheels all the way from Oregon so my grandfather could wire sonar for the ships in San Francisco Bay. They pulled together to get into the black, her lungs so scarred, some San Andreas fault lines, her veins. They said she would pull through. For what? For what? For what? Thank you. Esther Vygotsky. Esther Vygotsky was the sister of Henry Kress, and Henry Kress and his wife, Mary Kress, were survivors of the Holocaust, capital H. Esther Vygotsky was a handsome woman in her 50s when I knew her. She had that hair that women of the 1970s wore from their time in other decades, choked curls and blonde and dirty blonde and folded and oiled and draped on the face, lipstick, the kind of coral pink the 1970s brewed, the kind of color found on food and sauce and ladies' restrooms, the kind of color that came from inside the radio, cough syrup and ballet ribbons, the kind of color that makes a girl say, I love pink. Pink is my color. The kind of pink that trails with you ever after. Esther Vygotsky came to events and Shabbats and dinners and weddings. She wore strappy back high-heeled sandals on dark nude pantyhose and knee-length diaphanous skirts with ruffle hems. She had brown knuckles and clacking rings. She had money and a new Dodge. Her husband was rotund and gray with starched long-collared shirts, but Esther Vygotsky had been a capo in the camps. So even though people smiled as they passed her tea, when she lowered her eyes, they whispered, bitch. Los Angeles girl watches all the Jews of California, knowing she's on the outside looking in, knowing still she is no blood relation, knowing she's listening. Some keep her out, some draw her close. Aunt Judy and Uncle Paul Skopitsky squire her around Palo Alto Gardens, all the trees they planted with their bare hands and $5 in their pocket. Linda, when first we come United States, we brought the plum tree. It was the size of house cat. Look now. And here, my kumquat, we never have in Poland, but now look, its berries go above the roof. Sometimes in wind, I hear fruit dancing on the shingles, and I know, Lindale, there is a God. Thank you. This is a poem for a dear friend who has parted from this world, for the great Toni Morrison. It's called A Hymnal. And there she was on Broadway between 49th and 50th. And you know what that means. Even if you don't know the city, you can still feel it because New York is everything. And I hailed, Toni Morrison. And she said, girl, you know I am. And I said, tell me you didn't win the Nobel Prize for just those stories. And she threw her head all around and said, you know I did. And we laughed and we crossed each other on the sidewalk. And smiling, I kept looking in the back of me at how she was going along like you do. But then I just kept on walking until I heard quick steps behind me. And I turned around and her face was in my face. And she stopped a second to catch her breath. And there she told me something I'll never forget. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then I guess I'll end with this piece called Elementary School for one of my very favorite writers, for Bridget Pegeen Kelly, who has also left this world, but left it hopefully a better place. This is sort of a tribute to her poem Song. If you don't know it, please know it. There was a goat's head hanging by ropes in a tree, she said. You know, you have to forgive men. Immediately, I wanted to say, yeah, but for how long? But I knew she'd say, it's a process, it's a cycle. We have to thank them for the wheels and the trips to CVS and the houses, that it's a balancing act for everything, everywhere, that marriage is about, in the end, coming to an agreement that somehow you both need each other, especially as you get on in life. 3 husbands, 4 husbands, lots of sons. The song of the night bird, she said. They say it's something men are, like it's what boys do. Something comes over them. Maybe it's a little bit biology, maybe it's a little bit dark anatomy. They just don't know why they did it. They were in a group of them. It was like they all saw red or black or some color. It's built into society too, to forgive them, to punish them hard and then forgive them, to punish them hard and never forgive them. It's built in. You have to say sorry and you have to mean it. Cried like a man and struggled hard, she said. Even a woman recognizes the struggles of a man. Even a woman talking about murderous intent of children who happen to be young men in the making. There, a sweet song of forgiveness shocks the night with its beauty and tenderness, the sweetness of, I'm sorry. Everybody cries for a man, the man you lost, the man you never knew. And would you be surprised to know your own father had a dungeon, not a metaphorical dungeon, but an actual dungeon where he did things that men do, things he needs to be forgiven for, things he will be forgiven for, songs he'll sing to be forgiven for, the way his song goes on forever when his song is a cry for forgiveness for the things men do. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Linda. Okay, next up we have Anne Chalik. We all know Anne. Many of us know Anne. All right. Anne is a writer and editor living in the heart of Silicon Valley, if Silicon Valley can said to have a heart. Sorry, let me start over. We're going to read it twice. Anne Chalik is a writer and editor living in the heart of Silicon Valley, if Silicon Valley can be said to have a heart. Her work has appeared in Rhino Poetry, Catamaran Literary Review, Gone Lawn, Juked, and other literary journals. She is a poetry editor for DMQ Review and founding editor of Midnight Kim. Here's Anne.
you, Addie. Oh, no. I'm stuck. There we go. Yes, if Silicon Valley can be said to have a heart, I live in that heart, Mountain View. It was once a very nice town that passed rent control, but more recently, it has shown itself to be a little bit hearted. And one of my poems tonight will talk about that. So anyway, it's great to be here tonight with all these wonderful poets from Read Magazine. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be in this company. So we live in an incredibly wealthy society, and yet every night there are people who go to bed hungry, and it's really because of the unequal distribution of resources. And a constant reminder of that for me is the fact that many neighborhoods here in California, including my own, are full of fruit trees, and nobody ever eats any of the fruit. And that's what my first poem is about. Property values. Fat scent of other people's peaches, spoiling, unculled in the August estate over the wall. No parking, no picking, no signs of anyone living behind the wash white plaster facade. Garden full red state, plum fall throughout, each a rat nip, excuse me, each a rat nip or two taken. Pomegranates left splitting their lips, breaking into grins for juncos to drill, tooth by bloody tooth. Downtown, 10,000 homeless. Uptown, squirrels like us, surf it with gleanings, lurk aloft in the stratus or nimbus of our skulls, fashioning dreams to supplant real meat. Fruit of folly, fruit of greed. See how we eat and eat, yet leave a trash of treats still swinging. So we all recently suffered through the pandemic isolation. And so it's no huge surprise to any of us to hear that recent studies have found striking similarities between how our bodies react to hunger and how they react to loneliness. The same part of our brains is activated in both situations, and both states trigger low energy and heightened fatigue and anxiety. In fact, there's a term that you might have heard in the news in the last few years, skin hunger, that refers to this biological need that we all have for closeness and touch. My next two poems speak to that connection. On hands. On the one hand, 91% of people can't be wrong. But on the other hand, that's how many women hate their bodies. On the one hand, it is said, we never truly know our parents. But on the other, we memorize every diet in their date book, every frown of their facade and slam of the refrigerator door. On the one hand, love lasts forever. On the other, I can't remember half the people I've kissed. Like a sensory time machine, aromas trigger long buried memories, and yet you can't wade in the same feeling twice. On the one hand, I selfishly ate an heirloom orange in my mother's hospital room the day she died, because watching her die hungry made me hungry. On the other hand, I held the fragrant peel under her artificially oxygenated nose so that she would get one last hit of carnal pleasure in this life. Was I right? Did her hand squeeze mine? 3 nights later, 3 street lights in a row blinked on as I passed under them, peeling a freshly pilfered mandarin. On the other hand, we are speaking of the soul who switched on the light every morning I slept in her house to pull me out of dreams and into this world of debts and deadlines. On the one hand, I have her old wedding ring. It rests on my bedside table in lieu of lamp and alarm clock. On the other hand, who am I fooling? I have nothing but the knuckle bones of dreams. Undeliverable. A pine that escaped the fire but felt the heat turns brown from crown to root. It takes an expert eye to know if treatable grief or dead pine standing. Like with my mother, just get through this and life will be good again, we said. She did not believe us, but she loved us and was used to being patient while being called impatient, doing what land does after each new apocalypse, change and wait to see if the new life is enough. The Caldor fire scar is huge. Each carbon-tombed tree once fed a city of chipmunks, of jays, deer, moss, beetles, and worms, and died interstate. Here the larkspur blooms. There, the last incense cedar refuses water. 100 lakes, cold and black brimming. Between them, seeps and drips and falls, creeks roaring with the year's snowmelt, angrily undrunk. And all this newly undeliverable melt in me is the same. Churning, roaring for the touch of familiar roots, the shade, the murmur of tongues, searching for the taste of lives it once fed. I'd like to close with someone else's words. This is from Ukrainian writer Ostap Slavinsky, who notes that war changes the meaning of words. Some are blunted and need sharpening. Some become so sharp you cannot look at them. So he went all over Ukraine and interviewed war refugees and displaced persons in railway stations and coffee shops. And he recorded their stories and then edited them down to form what he called a war vocabulary. And I would like to read for you the words of Anna, interviewed at Kyiv. This is apples. That night, I fell asleep in the bathtub in a bucket of blankets and pillows, listening to the most powerful explosions here since the beginning of the war. Long ago, in a past life, I was crazy in love, and we went to a house in the Carpathian Mountains. It was deep in autumn. We fell asleep in an attic, in a bed that was not much more comfortable than the bathtub. and I listened to apples hitting the ground everywhere in the garden. The slamming of the large, ripe apples continued at a measured pace throughout the night. I was happy. Now I fall asleep to the explosions, and I hear those apples. I so badly want it to be those garden apples hitting the ground around us. Thank you. That was an ill-timed giggle, wasn't it?
Okay, good. Oh, yeah. We're not listening to them. Thanks, Anne. I want to note that Anne graciously volunteered many hours helping us read through submissions for issue 156, and I could always count on Anne for incisive and clear-minded critique. So really, thank you. You really helped me. Okay, so next we're going to move on to Dana Rodney. Dana began writing in 2018, compelled by the loss of 2 homes in California wildfires. As a result, she started writing on the theme of objects that hold memory, resulting in her first novel, One Extraordinary Thing. A second novel, The Last Polar Bear, is a climate thriller. Dana has also completed a collection of poetry titled Collect My Dust, Tragic Comic Poems of a Newly Old Woman. Dana has some books to sell back there too. Dana won awards in the SM Keats Literary Contest in San Francisco, the Jessamine West Writing Contest, and Redwood Writers Poetry Competition. She has published in Sad Girls Club, Grande, Dame Literary, and our very own Read Magazine. Come on up, Dana.
Wow, that makes me sound kind of important. I enjoyed that. Thank you, Addie, and thank you for choosing my poem, Collect My Dust, for issue 156. I am a poet and a climate fiction writer from Sebastopol, California. I thought I traveled the farthest to get here, but my fellow reader said he flew up from San Diego, so I guess I get second place this time. I started writing when I retired. I'm kind of a late bloomer. And I have been writing novels and writing poetry and just really enjoying myself, even doing watercolor painting. Today, I chose a poem titled What Then? And this was one of the only poems that I've written that has something to do with hunger. It asks the reader to consider the question, what if? What if humanity doesn't come to its senses? What if we don't solve the climate crisis soon enough? And wildlife extinction and food shortages and water shortages become our new reality. The poem also asks us, how would that affect us? How would that affect our creative potential as a species? So this poem is included in my poetry collection titled also Collect My Dust, and that is coming out next month on Amazon. So here is the poem, What Then? If not for the evening light split by a wintry branch, if not for the golden plain of a lover's thigh, if not for the midnight anthem of wild geese, but what of the starving child's lullaby, the trouble that hones you down like a ham in a smokehouse, sucking your fat, dripping you dry? If not for the embryonic hymn of ocean tides, if not for its canticle of song, if not for the stippled sand and whispering grass, but what of the slick of oil and the beached whale's gasp? What of the river's drip and the willow weeping? What of the proud, unrighteous men? When poets run out of words and put down their pens? If so, I ask of you, what then? Thank you. Can I read one more? Okay. I didn't know we were allowed to read more than one. But this one's also short. So this is a poem titled Inconsolable Beauty. This is my favorite poem. And it's interesting because it kind of came to me as I was trying to fall asleep one night. And I kept on waking up and writing down these phrases. And when I got up in the morning, I formed this poem. Inconsolable Beauty. I float face up in the pool, suspended. My arms splayed like a crucifix. A hummingbird flits over me. A jet intersects 30,000 feet above. Is that not a miracle? And me floating? What awful joy is life? What inconsolable beauty? 8 billion crashing souls, spilling hailstorms of words. We pace ahead of ourselves, irreverent, strident beings, imagining ourselves deserving when the depth of mercy we show each other is withheld. And you, there is always a you who didn't love enough, who didn't give enough. But floating here, I realize it was I who held too tightly to my heart. How can I contain it all? The pleading animal eyes, the disappointed lovers, the barely cloaked resentments of children, the barking foxes, the wild finches, the night blooming jasmine. The universe screams inside me. Our hearts clash like sparks of God, flinting off each other, floating like wayward angels in an infinite storm of beauty. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Next, we have Simone Zapata. Simone Zapata is a poet and educator from San Jose. Her work has been featured or is forthcoming in Read 156, Fog Lifter, and the Vassar Review, among others. She serves as managing editor for The Beat Within and as a poetry editor for Mayday magazine. She holds an MFA from California Institute of the Arts.
Thank you, Addie. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Helen. Hi, we met at AWP. It's okay if you don't remember. Yeah, I have 2 poems for you guys. I have a very new one, like finished this afternoon at 3 p.m. new. And then I have an oldie but a goodie. So I'm gonna start with my new one. Yeah. This one, I feel like I didn't have many poems that spoke about hunger. And when I was thinking, when I got invited to read at this event, was kind of drawn to foods that I ate in my very early childhood. And so this poem draws from that. It's called I Keep Trying to Explain My Nostalgia for Boxed Dinners. But then I realize, if you know, a comfort that's gray or brown, milky white, maybe a broccoli coated in sulfate, an acquired taste that yields a single mother with her daughter and a hamster at the dinner table, beef stroganoff, hamburger helper, tuna casserole with the Lay's on top. If you know, that new housing complex off 680 right there, almost on top of the freeway, almost inside our pocket, is a spidery thing to pull from in handfuls as a chant. Avalon. Avalon, Avalon, Avalon. A dream giving way to Wednesdays, spent with boyfriends and roller skates and push-up bras that you teach me to wear as the latch on a white picket fence, picking at the tags of frayed synthetic silk. If you know, to pay us in cash for our rent and our gas, fried pickles and squid at the fish market on Race Street. I never knew it then, but I'll say it now. We were satisfied. We are satisfied with oil and vinegar sandwiches in the bathtub, lots of mayo. The only way I get clean is to trap my first love, our calico cat, who I bait with craft singles from behind kitchen blinds. Don't move, Simone, but I do, as a child does, before she can think. And then she returns, day after day, until I am grown, not old enough to leave, but old enough to be left. If you know, you learn how to empty a body of prayer, pinching ribbons of smoke in a muted sunray, and our tired eyes wired wide awake. This next one is called Stone Sequence. I feel like it relates more broadly to hunger and also to consumption. I wrote this during quarantine when me and my partner and our 2 roommates were stuck in a house together. I live in a dream. And in the morning when I wake, I count stones at the base of each lung to remind myself that even shallow gulps are measured as breath. I watch the glow of green kitchen tiles before coffee. I read tarot at the dining room table with my roommate's cat curled up on my lap, the many octaves of a slow and steady engine, a cough, a stutter. I wrap a stone in his tail, a cough. I shove another into my underwear drawer, a cough. I wedge another between bath towels in the linen closet. I hide stones and fabrics made for skin, move my car to sweep the street to 7-Eleven on Broadway for Pirashkis next door and rosemary from fences. On the way back, I chuck pillows at my sleeping partner. 5 more minutes, she tells me. The ice plants were watered last night. There are doves still cooing in their dew. I flirt with our betta fish, admire his kingdom, a color still flaunting by noon, and I don't consider this an ignorance or a faith. I pull a stone from the substrate. I write that anger feels impossible, how it crusts like sand at my toenails, my ear piercings, and falls to the drain and globs that someone snakes out as hair. I want to say that boulders are built from this grime. I want to say that mountains are made of cigarette ash and soiled banter. I want to point to the billowing fire we convince ourselves is the neighbor's barbecue, while I prune the branches of pink lantana into 8 scraped palms and spackled concrete. Soon, all of the onion and garlic will press up from muddy holes and siphon nitrogen from their summer graves. While I down a cheap red blend, I draw with orange chalk. I scrub every baseboard in the house, and my roommate recites Plenty by David Hare. I open the fridge. I open the cupboards. Every compartment I open pours me a stone. Taco Bell it is, the 4 of us on the floor smearing fire sauce across a glass table, and we are many rolled up poems I can't remember the words to, except a house without a roof, a door without a knock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone. You submitted Stone Sequence to us, didn't you? I wish that we had published it. I'm sorry. We have another great poem by Simone in issue 156. It's not that one though. So, all right. Next up, we have Gabriel Ruby. Gabriel Ruby is a SoCal native. He holds an MFA in creative writing from San Diego State University. He lived and died in video games, but now he is a father afraid to die. He is a poet, translator, and nonfiction writer. His work has been published or is forthcoming in Hayden's Ferry Review, Poetry International, Gulfstream Magazine, the Indianapolis Review, Pank Magazine, and elsewhere. Gabriel is a 2017 Intro Journals Project winner.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for having me. As Daniel mentioned earlier, I did fly from San Diego, and I wouldn't miss it. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to read a couple of poems. The first one is called Running Backwards. The shoes run towards the 805, but his toes point back to the 5. The man with the beard coating his face runs reverse. The kids speak Spanish first, then go to school to breathe English, never looking back. The sun follows the moon, or is it reverse, and the moon precedes the sun. The ocean, so close, but we never touch it, afraid of the hunger that consumes, so we enter it backwards, our toes gifted, a head start if we need to run scared to the shore. Police are backwards chasing crooks instead of preventing crimes. The accidents on the roads, the families crossing. I'm never coming back to the South Bay, he says, moving away and not looking back. But I did. I left and returned to chase the rats from the attic, the roaches to their outdoor graves. Not backward, but moving forward. The man no longer runs, but pains his walk down Palm Avenue. The weight of it all reversed his path. This one's called The Family Bridge. West of the Silver Wing, a path beset, a ribbon, a paved highway slices bay and sea like alloy wings part the breeze for masts to lift air. Family from each side of the fence in sand. Pedro shovels pit as the sun moves from the bay to the beach side where the waves coil and crash. The whole aged and a bridge of sand to cross with care. The day a rind of melon to be held. The family is a kingdom of cousins. Our castles rise from torn plastic red cups. Smile on faces testing grains, holding life's weight. The bond to collapse under the pressure of what leaves prints in tender shoreline sand. Thank you. This one is called Montgomery Sonnet. I get it. Spanish was not on TV, so I hid my tongue to dampen the stamp. Language binds with the shared word, pura, pure. The craft to flight around noble is scored delirium, wings a waste of math calcs that could mend the sick. Your mind thinks on us, journal to develop wings and maintain control. Unlike Icarus, you'll give Earth a shorter distance traveled. Majestic morphs micro as we open new pathways, learn new tongues, sway dances, and taste dishes. This dream of eyeing more of this planet. Grown up, we understand that the mother tongue was never ashamed to wield them. Thank you. This is the poem that was selected by Read Magazine. So it's called Transverse. Transverse. Crossed a Mexican desert, landed north side of a fence, the birth of accents, the flight of souls, traveled the night. The first flight was a circle that witnessed 2 countries. The dust of our days is swept as we learn to speak the tongues of our neighbors. We teach them to bake on our words, sweet their thoughts, speak with the ones longing for home. The horror of difference is made for us to carry along a barren plain. No water, just our wet words we hope to carry and avoid losing ourselves in the drought. Thank you.
Thank you. So cool to hear these live. Oh my gosh. Last, we are excited to present Christina Cha. Christina is a poet and educator from LA and the Bay. Her work appears in the LA Press and other journals. You can find her at Christina W.J. Cha on Instagram. Did I get that right, Christina? Christina W.J. Cha? Christina.wj.cha. Yeah, come on up.
Thank you. This piece is, I was going to read a piece from the Los Angeles Press, copies that are back there, but I changed my mind, but it's adjacent to those pieces. And it's from an upcoming collection of poetry and prose related to my aunt as an artist in her life and in her murder,
Her name is Teresa Hakyung Cha, and I love to write and read about her, even though I swore never to until maybe like 5 years ago. But now it helps me stay in conversation with her because this is where she lives. She's still out here. The trigger warning is in the title of this one, where you were raped and murdered. The title is Where You Were Raped and Murdered. Trigger warning. That's actually as triggering as it gets. You are my Aunt Teresa. You are married. You are dead. These two new facts next to each other, separated by 6 months, collapsed by kid time, fused over the years. Sometime after this, my parents first tell me about rape. I don't recall the sex talk, but I remember the rape talk when I am 10. You're married when I am 10. I am your flower girl. Your dress is a plain white sheath with a scoop neck. The stiff cloth stands away from your body and the sleeves end just above your wrists. The important part is the high lavender sash with diagonal hatch marks of deeper purple. Lavender is your favorite color. Iris is your favorite flower. You don't want much at your wedding, you say, but you want these things. Purple is my favorite color. Rainbows and unicorns are important to me. It is 1982. Your sisters stand close to you, binding and unbinding the cloth around your waist. Grandma frowns as she watches because the cloth is a kimono sash. Ma, it's not a kimono. It's Teresa's own style. It's not Japanese, Bernadette says. Living under Japanese rule is still fresh for Grandma, who is Korean. I am there when you pick out your shoes. Lavender suede high heels that almost look like boots and are very expensive. Bernadette handles them like something precious, making her hands cupped and floating and beautiful. Dad writes a book. I don't know when he starts. The book looms always there. The book. A call and response between me and Dad repeated into distortion from a terrible movie where a lumpy-faced troll shakes a magical tome at the sky, proclaiming the book. The manuscript of his years of trials, 7 by the end. As a witness, a brother, the book, his way to process and distance and keep it close. The book fills the house and it settles in the office behind the office, in the addition that he builds, where he does most of his writing. Incarnations of typewriter, progressively smoother and quieter, and then a fat monitor with a tiny blue screen. Dad builds the back room without the proper permits, even though he's an engineer and knows what's what. Years later, he is asked to destroy this room before he sells the house, and he does. Our house, the same as every other house on the block, except for this room. The first time I read the book, I am 17. I ask for it. I want to know. The trials are over, the sentencing. I want to know. I bring the binder into bed with me like a normal book, reading into the night, although I close it carefully and push it away from my bed instead of letting it fall on my chest to follow me into sleep. Still, it stays behind my eyes and in my body and in the nightmare. The table, my parents, the hutch. 3 of us sit around the table, just me and my parents without my brothers. Is it a settee or an armoire? A hutch. The hutch under the window that frames the backyard. The furniture is always moving, so the hutch could be against the wall. I am always in the same chair. I learned to read in this chair, in a book shaped like a fat ginger cat. The and cat, my first words. I'm sitting there when they tell my brothers and me, you died in a car accident. I am sitting there months later when they recant. It was not a car accident, they say. You were raped and murdered. Raped, then murdered. Raped and murdered. I go up to my room. I have a new diary I've been saving, a square block of tan hardcover and thick cream pages, butterflies stamped onto the front, orange and black and purple, outlined in gold. I write slowly, I bear down hard with blue ballpoint. Today, my parents told me Teresa was raped and murdered. Okay, I'll end it there.
Wow. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has read today and who is here watching. We would really like to encourage you to check out Read Magazine at readmag.org, where we have just released, as of yesterday, a new poem from our issue 156 batch of poems. It is by C3 Crew, and it's called On February 14th. And we released some other poems last week, I think. So we are going to be releasing nonfiction and prose next. And we've got a really wonderful selection of works coming out, and even more beautiful work coming out in the magazine issue 156, which will be released soon. And finally, this weekend, Legacy of Poetry. As Peggy said, there are some amazing, legendary poets who are reading this weekend. So yeah, please come check us out. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone who read. You touched our hearts, all of you. Thank you so, so much. What a gift. And thank you for those of you who came to be witness, to hear, to share, to think. Please talk to each other, swap information, come get something to eat and drink, and please come back. We'll be here again on Thursday, and then certainly Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The programming will be in the University Theater. So much bigger place, lots more poets. Let's celebrate your poetry as long as we can. So thank you. Thank you.